The story you are about to hear is true.
Attention, all true.
He's alive! Alive!
Welcome to the Retroist.
At one point when I was a kid, my mother decided that she was going to move us. They were building this housing development out in this rural section of New Jersey, and my mother had gotten some literature on it and fell in love with the place. We actually went to tour it. We saw the model homes. Everything looked nice, but one of the things I was struck with while my family toured the house was how excited they got over everything, and how I was not excited about anything. They liked little touches here, they liked this bathroom having this feature, double doors here, patios, balconies. I could care less, because unlike my sisters and my mom, I was still a kid. There was no water slide, there was no pirate grotto, nothing that would excite me. This is exactly how I felt almost all of the time when my family would go shopping. There were rare exceptions. One of the biggest exceptions is when I got my family to go to Toys R Us. And Toys R Us was very different than every other toy store that we might go to, because my family loved going to malls. We would go on a weekend and we could be there the entire day. And I would luckily get to go to maybe one or two toy stores if the mall had them. Toys R Us stood alone. So when we went to Toys R Us, we went specifically for me. Needless to say, we did not go to Toys R Us as often as we went to other stores. But when we did, I would walk in and I would feel exactly what my family felt when they were going into those model homes. That this place was designed to make me happy. And when I close my eyes and think of Toys R Us, I don't think of the modern Toys R Us that I visited as an adult. I think of those dense, high shelves filled with so many toys. It made your kid mind hurt. On today's show, I'd like to talk to you about Toys R Us. We'll talk about the person who founded it. We'll talk a little bit about its history, its bankruptcies, its partnerships, its other brands, and we'll throw in a few surprises here and there. We have an info-packed episode ahead of us, so without further ado, let's start the show. Toys R Us was founded by Charles P. Lazarus. Lazarus was born in 1923. He had gone away to World War II, and when he came back, he realized that things were about to change, that people who had gone to war would want to come back and start families. So he rented a former bicycle repair shop on the ground floor of the house he grew up in, and started to carry things like carriages, strollers, cribs, and high chairs. Anything that you would need if you were going to have a baby. At this point, the baby boom started. So he had really good timing, making a lot of money, and as he started to learn how to run a store, he kept listening to his customers, trying to hear what they wanted. One of the things that was asked for when you're buying cribs are toys for the kids, and he did not carry toys at first. But listening to his customers, he realized, what if I actually started carrying some toys? And they were a big success. More importantly, what he realized is that once he sold a crib, he wasn't going to get another customer coming in to buy a crib anytime soon. But if they came in for a toy and the toy broke, they would come in and buy another toy. Or the very next year, they would just need more toys. So toys seemed like the natural place to go next. At this point, he expanded. There was an empty supermarket next door, and he lined the shelves with boxes of toys, sort of the proto-Toys R Us. And because he could do this in volume, he offered big discounts. And that combination of pricing and massive selection drew the people in. They were located in the middle of Washington, D.C., and people had to find parking, which was really hard to do. But word of mouth spread like wildfire, and this new store was a hit. These children's bargain towns were really well and good, but they didn't really convey what these stores were all about. So in 1957, when Lazarus opened his second store, he named it Toys R Us, with the R backwards in the middle. This was a big risk because this was pre-mall culture, before big box stores were all the rage. He was going into brand new territory. And to really survive, they needed to not just sell toys at Christmas time when everybody was buying toys, but all year round. So they had to start looking for what was the hot toy? What did parents want? They had to basically help to invent the modern toy culture. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. When I was a kid, my family would get bagels, and this main bagel place that we would go to was called Bagels R Us, with the R spelled backwards and everything. And eventually, they had to change the name of the bagel place from Bagels R Us to Bagels That's Us, because I believe they were sued by Toys R Us. At least that was the story around town. No matter what the name, they really sold good bagels. But I remember kind of learning that you couldn't name something after something else without consequences. And that might have been the first time I learned that. In '66, Lazarus had 4 stores and decided that he was going to expand. So he needed money. So he sold the operation to Interstate Sales for $7.5 million in cash, and a guarantee that he would stay on as head of the toy division. As head of the toy division, Toys R Us continued to be under Lazarus's direction, but Interstate was not doing so well. They tried to grow too fast, and they needed to file for bankruptcy in 1974. Lazarus managed to talk the courts into allowing him to oversee Interstate during the bankruptcy, and he began a restructuring plan, liquidating and selling off unprofitable divisions, but retaining the toy stores. And in 4 years, Interstate emerged from bankruptcy, and they had a brand new name, Toys R Us. After these messages, we'll be right back.
I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got the best for so much less. You really flip your lid. From bike to train to video games, it's the biggest toy store there is.
Gee whiz!
I don't want to grow up, 'cause baby, if I did, I couldn't be a Toys R Us kid. More games, more toys. Oh boy, I want to be a Toys R Us kid.
And now, back to the show. Lazarus would run Toys R Us until 1994. Then he turned over the CEO title to Michael Goldstein. But he would remain at the company as chairman emeritus and serving as a sort of ambassador of Toys R Us to foreign countries when they were hoping to open new ones. And open them they would. Toys R Us would go international starting in 1984, opening its first store in Canada. Then it would license operations in Singapore before expanding into 35 countries. But Toys R Us just wasn't going to be a store that sold toys. No, the brand, the R Us brand, could expand into other things. Things like Kids R Us, which had its first locations in Paramus, New Jersey and Brooklyn, New York. And I think during the first month it was opened in Paramus, my family went and visited it. It was kind of exciting for a new store to open up. Kids R Us would fold in 2003. In 1996, the first Babies R Us location was opened in Westbury, New York. And this kind of gets back to Lazarus's original business, which was baby supplies, baby products, cribs, all that fun stuff. It would do very well because it would also have a registry. So if you were having a kid, you could register there, and people could buy stuff for your upcoming baby. In 2006, Toys R Us bought the fabled FAO Schwarz toy company, including their flagship store on Fifth Avenue in New York. And if you don't know what FAO Schwarz is, do you remember the toy store in the movie Big? That's it. That's FAO Schwarz, this sort of mega amazing complex for children's dreams to come true. They would pick that up and maintain it for about 9 years before closing it in 2015, saying that it was just too expensive to keep open. Although they would continue to carry FAO Schwarz branded toys in their Toys R Us locations. In the late aughts, Toys R Us opened Toys R Us Express stores around the holidays. These were these small store concepts that for people who couldn't get to the big box stores or didn't want to shop online, maybe they're passing through the mall and just want to get all their shopping done in one place. These things would crop up all over the place. And I think it was a year later or so, I saw my first one and didn't really know what to make of it. After these messages, we'll be right back.
New York City, you think of liberty. When you think of San Francisco, cable cars you see. From the Hudson to Pacific to New England shores. When you think of toys for your family, think of our stores. When you think of toys, think of Toys R Us.
And now, back to the show. So you've heard some great advertisements throughout the show so far. Many of them feature the Toys R Us mascot, Geoffrey Giraffe. Geoffrey got his start as Dr. Giraffe in print advertisements back in the 50s for the original stores that Lazarus opened, the Children's Bargain Towns. But when Children's Bargain Town became Toys R Us, the artist who had made Dr. Giraffe designed a more lifelike version, and they renamed him Geoffrey. By the 60s, he was so popular that they started making in-store appearances and actually inspired products that had Geoffrey on them. I actually had a Geoffrey Giraffe Jack-in-the-Box as a kid, a Geoffrey in the box, if you will, and it was one of my favorite toys. I was very annoyed that at one point when I was in high school, we had a garage sale, and my sister sold it for 15 cents. I still remember that. But I don't hold a grudge. Maybe a little. Geoffrey would go through all sorts of changes over the years, besides the visual changes, which were kind of weird. It was in the 70s when they introduced Geoffrey's entire family, and people loved Geoffrey's family. Big hit. They would have him and his family show up at stores, now as an entire family. Also, he would show up in parades, as well as in advertisements together. Geoffrey's wife's name was Gigi, his son's name was Geoffrey Jr., and his daughter's name was Baby G. After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi there, friends. It's Geoffrey. When you come to Toys R Us, you can meet me, along with Gigi and little baby G. And wait till you hear who else you can see.
You'll meet the amazing Spider-Man at Toys R Us. The Incredible Hulk will be there, too. You'll see that beautiful crime fighter, Wonder Woman. The dynamic duo of Batman and Robin. And cute little Geoffrey Jr., too.
The local newspapers will have time and place. Toys R Us.
And now, back to the show. I was working on the internet pretty early, building web pages and whatnot, and ToysRUs.com in the late 90s was a pretty good brand. But at the height of the .com stuff at the late 90s, the Christmas rush took its toll on ToysRUs.com, and they failed to deliver their Christmas gifts to people on time. This led them to enter into a contract with a company that you might have heard of called Amazon in 2000 to become the exclusive supplier of toys to the website. This seemed great for both parties. Amazon instantly had all these toys. Toys R Us would pick up the digital know-how of Amazon. Unfortunately, the relationship went sideways. Amazon said they wanted them to expand their offering. Toys R Us said, we're the biggest toy store there is. Amazon said, no, there are other people who want to sell stuff, and they opened up Amazon to other sellers. This annoyed Toys R Us, and they said, you got to take those down. Amazon said, no, and the contract fell apart. Toys R Us would move in and try to sell toys online themselves, but you got to remember, they had now been partnering with Amazon for all this time, and they had not developed the technical know-how they would need to sell toys. So it was a big leap, and they would constantly be playing catch-up. Eventually, they would just start buying other online toy brands, hoping to close the gap, and then they would sue Amazon. Eventually, Toys R Us would win this case and would be awarded $51 million, which was over half of what they initially claimed they wanted. $51 million is a lot of money, but when you consider all the toys that are sold online, I think Amazon came away winning this one. They delayed Toys R Us from entering the internet sale of toys, while they built up their ability to not just sell, but ship, distribute, advertise, all the things that Toys R Us would eventually need to teach themselves to do. After these messages, we'll be right back.